Hi, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Uplink podcast. As an avid listener, you probably noticed it immediately. Something is different today. This is the first episode in which we speak English, not German. And the reason for that is, as you might have guessed, that we have an international guest, I might say. This guest is Laurent Hausmann from France. He's the founder of a platform called Tima. Bonsoir, Laurent.
Hello, Emmanuel.
Did I say that properly? Bonsoir? I never said it right.
Say bonjour, but it's fine as well.
Bonjour, bonsoir, whatever. I tried. I did my best. It's great to have you on. Now, Laurent, we go way back. We first met back in 2006, I believe, or 2007.
Yeah.
And we met doing a Swedish language course in Stockholm, where we both lived at the time. And back then, you were a Nordic sales manager for a wallpaper company. Is that fair to say?
That's correct. Yeah.
And now you're the founder of a freelance platform.
Yeah.
What happened in those last 15 years? Can you summarize that?
Yeah, sure, I can do that. Well, when we met indeed in Sweden, I was working for quite a conservative industry, I must say. Wallpaper industry is not really considered as a startup within the startup scene. I started that job in England actually straight after university degree, and then moved to Sweden, being in charge then as a sales manager of the Nordic countries, and then kept on working actually within the industry for close to 10 years actually, being sales director at some point, and then at the end became managing director from one of the subsidiary in France. So all my experience was within sales manager, and within driving a company basically in a business. And I think like many of us, after a while, I just decided that it was time to go for an entrepreneurial adventure. That was something that I had in mind for many years. As a matter of fact, actually, since I left university, I had this dream to become an entrepreneur one day, but I didn't have the skills back then, and not much to sell, I guess. Definitely not an idea of a company, and I think I was lacking courage as well. So I was definitely lacking key ingredients, let's put it that way, to launch a company. But then with the experience, eventually I came to the conclusion that it was the right timing, basically.
And was there like a perfect point where you decided, okay, now it's the time? I mean, it feels like something where they say it's never the right time for it. At some point, you just have to take the leap. But how was it for you? Was there like one point where you really noticed, okay, now I really have to do it? Otherwise, I'll never do it, maybe?
Yeah, well, it's not like I'm not the kind of person that think like, if you don't do it now, it's never going to happen later, but definitely felt right at the time. I think it was already 2 years that I had that in mind, but I just got a new job as a managing director. And obviously it's quite a demanding job. You've got a team to look after and take some commitments with the companies. So although I had that in mind for the past 2 years when I eventually started, the timing was not right. But then eventually, being a managing director make me feel comfortable that I was able to maybe drive a company on my own. Since I was an employee for 12 years, I had saved money as well for 12 years. I always thought that part of that money would be used once for my own company too. So it felt like not only I had, some skills, additional skills, some money aside, and from a personal perspective as well, I was free. I didn't have any commitment in terms of family. So I guess, if you have a bit of money and you feel comfortable that you have enough skills to launch something and you don't have any commitment, you don't really have to be very brave to set up a company, I guess. So it was quite a comfortable timing for me. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. So right now you're the founder of a platform called Tima, which we're going to talk about. But let's start at the beginning. When you started as an entrepreneur, you launched a co-working space and a café called Närmare. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Well, funny things is when I actually decided to set up a business, I still had no idea what I was going to do. So it didn't change much from the first day after school. But I was sure that I was going to do something. And I definitely knew that I would not set up a business while being employed. It's just, again, very demanding job. And I think it's too comfortable when you have a well-paid salary, a well-paid job, to actually work on the side as well. So I just decided one day that it was the right time. And I announced to my employers, to my company, that I wanted to leave, basically.
What was the reaction then?
Business, but I had no idea back then. Really, no clue what I was going to do. But I thought it would be the best way for me to find out, basically.
Okay.
So after I left the company, I started to work in co-working spaces, trying to find a way, and try to figure out what I would do, whether I would stay within this same industry, whether I would change totally. And I just realized after a couple of weeks working there that, I'm the type of person that needs silence to work. Maybe I'm the old-fashioned one, I have really trouble to focus and concentrate within too many people around chatting and talking on the phone. And that was something that I found very difficult to find in Paris. Most of those co-working café, which you pay by the hours, are quite lively, I would say. And I thought that would be a good idea to have a co-working with a main space being silent, basically. Mm-hmm. And that's how I started basically my market study. Realized there was no such a co-working space cafe in Paris. And that's when I decided to launch such a co-working cafe, basically.
But the concept of a co-working cafe was already there. Like there were places around.
Anything, I just saw something that was missing, and that was talking to myself basically. And I thought that maybe I wouldn't be the only one that need basically some space, because most of those co-working cafe are quite small as well, and you just all sit next to each other. It's a bit like in a Starbucks cafe, Mm-hmm. And it's definitely not silent. So I thought that I should not be the only one that need that basically kind of spaces, and that's how I set it up, the whole concept. But co-working cafe as a concept exists already in France for many years, indeed.
Because for me, it was the first time when I heard it from you. I've never heard of course, like I heard of cafes that are used as co-working places, more or less, where people just go to and work from there regularly. But the concept that you really go there and you pay by the hour, and you have like all the amenities of a cafe, but you still are there to work. Is that still common in France? Have you seen that anywhere else in the world?
Well, actually, I have to say I haven't seen it much elsewhere. It feels like that's something that works really well in France and is still expanding right now. But I haven't seen it for example, in England so much, or in Sweden, or in the southern countries in Europe. I don't know. What about Germany? I think it's more classical co-working, basically.
Yeah. I've never heard the concept or even the expression.
It's very Parisian at first as well. I must say, because we have this culture of cafe, going to a cafe to talk about work as well. We do have meetings in cafe, so and co-working is nothing new though. So I think it was just the combination of this cultural aspect, small spaces in France as well, and especially in Paris. Everything costs a lot in Paris, and that's why maybe it just it works so well in France and in Paris especially.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. How did you enforce the silence in your cafe? I mean, you don't put music on, of course, but you still have a loud coffee machine probably, and you have people coming in. Were there only co-workers, or was it like normal cafe business as well?
No, it was only co-workers basically, but we had some rooms where you were allowed to speak. We had meeting rooms as well, but whenever someone would come in for the first time, we would just explain the concept, saying that it was a silent, the main area was a silent one, and whenever they needed to talk to someone, there was two other area they could go to, and there was also a meeting room they could go to as well if they wanted to have full privacy. So was just by explaining it. And I think when you enter the co-working was pretty clear as well, since it was dead silent, so I think the environment made it pretty clear what was the concept about.
Yeah. Everybody's looking at you and nobody's speaking.
Pretty much, yeah.
So you founded that in 2017, is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah,
that's correct.
And how did it go after that? How long did you run that?
I had the co-working for close to 3 years. Well, it didn't work as well as I was expecting. Basically, the positive side was that I did meet the customer I was looking for. So and we had some great review. We were ranked in the top 5 of co-working spaces, in Paris. So I had some really good review. But the whole business model was based on having repeating customers, coming in a regular basis. And we just realized that the customers that do come once, twice a week, that make this business go round, basically, they don't go to silent places. They maybe go to a silent place once, twice a month when they actually have to work on something specific, when they don't want to be disturbed. But for the rest of the time, they need to talk to someone, chat on the phone, and they don't want to change space all the time. And this basically space was not adapted to the co-working, most of the co-working worker, basically the co-workers, sorry. So although we had many more single user or single customer that were expected at the time, and they were extremely loyal, but for some of the customer, I would see them, once every 3 months, and obviously this, you need them to come much more often. So it took a while before we broke even, and we just realized that if we wanted to have this model concept to work, we would need a much bigger place. It was not the concept the problem; it was the tiny, the small size of the area we had, which made it difficult to have both a large silent area with somewhere we could actually talk and call as well, and have a video call. So it was basically a decision that I had to take. So as whether I should actually go for a bigger one, or I should stop and focus on something else. And I took the second decision, especially because at the time already, I had already launched my second company, Tima. And I saw a much bigger potential with Tima, and something maybe also that was better suited for my own competence. And we just realized that, it was time to say stop. It was a great experience. It helped me actually launch Tima. I wouldn't have launched Tima without having the coworking cafe. But it was also the right time, I think, to just to stop it.
And did you sell it to somebody else? Is it still a co-working cafe? Or
no, it's not. Fortunately, we managed to sell the business, but it has turned to something else than a co-working cafe right now.
What is it now?
We managed to sell it. So from a financial perspective, although it was not the best investment that I've done, to be totally fair, the financial loss were not as huge as they could have been. So it was okay, basically.
Yeah,
and it was a great learning experience. So I bought myself.
When did you sell it? Did Corona
experience? Sorry.
Yeah. When did you sell it? Did Corona play any role in that? Or
no, I was extremely lucky. When I took the decision to stop the business, it was just before Corona, and it was a quick sale. The place was very attractive, in a very attractive arrondissement in Paris, so it was easy to find a buyer. And I basically sold the place in January, 2 months before Corona. The COVID came, so that was pure luck.
Yeah,
pure luck. Obviously, I didn't see that one coming.
Yeah, that was a major bullet that you dodged there, I think, because I don't know how viable it would have been to sell a cafe during Corona, right? During the first Corona wave.
To be totally fair, it would have been costly to keep it, indeed. So I was not only fortunate that I sold it, and I also very fortunate that I had this second business that I launched almost 6-7 months before the end of the co-working cafe.
Yeah, yeah. So tell me about Tima. What is it? What problem is it solving? And how did having the co-working cafe lead you into that?
Well, basically, Tima started now 3.5 years ago. At first, it was here to help the coworkers, basically. As I said, we had some very loyal coworkers that I got very close to. For some of them, are still good friends, and we were sharing our experience as a small business owner. For most of the coworkers, usually they're either solo entrepreneur or small business owner. And as a small size business, you tend to do all the admin yourself as an entrepreneur. And we just realized that there is no services that help the small size company. Either you go for a freelance, but it's still quite costly because usually the freelancer wants to work at least, one morning. That's the minimum, usually 1 day per week minimum, for a couple of months. Or you have you have to basically hire someone internally, and that's quite costly as well. But when you're a small size company, sometimes you just don't have the means for either options. So we were starting to look at what kind of admin parts can be outsourced. And we just realized that everything that comes before the actual accounting, whether it's invoicing, quotation, and chasing the money, and everything which is not related to actually accounting, it's something that is you can simply outsource. And that do represent from anything between 4 hours to 20 hours per month. So we came up with this service. So this executive assistant service for those tiny, small companies, focusing especially on those tasks, basically. And that's how Tima basically was launched 3.5 years ago. So all my first customers were coworkers, basically. Mm-hmm. So we had great feedback, obviously, from them. Because not only we saw them in a co-working cafe, but they were our customers as well, with the other services. And that's how it all started, basically. Obviously, some of our customers became bigger, so we helped them with more admins. And then we got on board some additional customers that were not from the co-working cafe. So that's how it all started, basically, as a executive or virtual, let's put it that way, virtual executive assistant service.
Mm-hmm. And did you find the assistants, office managers through the cafe as well, or did you simply go out and basically looked for them when you had a client who needed one?
No, I actually went out and I did hire actually a executive assistant and office manager. And we basically, how it works is simple. We allocate, their time for different customers. And at first as well, I was myself, an assistant and an office manager, dealing with myself with the customers, learning as well. A few mistakes, I have to admit as well. But soon enough, I was joined by a real expert that actually did the job much better than myself, helping our customer basically to get rid of at least some part of the admin work and lower the burden.
In the beginning, you actually took on the tasks that now the freelancers are doing.
Yes, I did for 1.5 years, both on my own at some point and with someone else. So yes, for 1.5 years, I was my daily work was actually to help my customer with the admin, and I learned everything about it. I used to have to be fortunate enough to have when I was an employee, a commercial assistant, then an executive assistant, and then an office manager. And so I knew, what kind of task I was giving them. But now I was doing it myself.
You had to do them yourself. Yeah. And you did it to basically kickstart the business, to be able to have clients because it's a marketplace, right? And it always has the same problems that every marketplace has, that you have to kind of build up both sides of the marketplace, and it's only interesting for one side if the other side is already there. So you did it to be able to get the clients without having the freelancers yet. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, not exactly, actually. Yes and no. At first, we were not a platform. We're just a service provider. So basically, again, it was no freelancer. It was just The whole idea was to give us the work to someone who is within Tima. We control the process internally, we control the quality with people that are employed by Tima. That was a way also for the solo entrepreneur and small business to trust the service and say, we don't give away your work, which can be quite confidential to someone else, a freelancer. We do it ourselves with our own process. And we had quite an innovative way of dealing with that as well, where you would buy some time, 4 hours, 6 hours, 10, 20 hours. And you could follow in real time how much time we were using from this budget every month and see where it was allocated. So it was not just about dealing with the admin, but there was also a new approach with this total transparency so that the customer itself could check what was being done and see what was the added value actually of using our service. So at first it was never meant to be a platform, not that part of the business anyway. We eventually moved to a platform system simply to be able to serve more customers, because obviously when you hire people, you're limited to the capacity you have inside the company, which at some point is limited, obviously, and because you cannot have all the skills in the admin basically world either. So a year and a half ago, we decided that on top of this virtual executive assistant service, we would also launch a platform for freelancers so that we could basically target and bring solution to more customers in need.
And is it the same clients using those? Like, do you do the executive service for some of them and they then post other gigs or projects for the freelancers, or is it completely separate?
Yeah, it has actually broadened the horizon and the customer types. When we were really focusing on small companies, usually less than 5 employees, many solo entrepreneur, with the freelancer, we are able to touch any type of companies, from the very small worker, solo entrepreneur, all the way to the large size business. And obviously startup business, medium-sized business. So basically the concept is still running. It's called Tima Exec, is still serving only the small size company as a virtual service. And now we offer this freelancer platform, which can be virtual. I mean, some freelancer choose to work only remotely, but some of them as well work at the client. Which also happened quite a lot, especially for office manager job.
Yeah, it's the way you explain it kind of makes sense, that the companies, they have different needs and they have different tasks that sometimes they want to completely outsource, and sometimes it's probably very repetitive or very clearly structured, let's say, that a freelancer or even different freelancers can easily take it on. And then sometimes if it's confidential material or if it's very involved, they need somebody that they can talk to and explain it to, and they need the very intensive service probably. So I think many people know Malt as the biggest freelancing network in France. Would I be able to find similar freelancers there as well? Or do you have a niche where most of the freelancers are not available on Malt, for example?
Well, first of all, Malt is a great company. We should start to say that. And
absolutely,
it has paved the way for many of the platforms that came afterwards, including Tima. I think they've promoted freelancing massively in France and elsewhere, because they're not just in France as you know, and they made it. They made it feel more accessible, both for the companies, but also for the freelancer themselves. And as a matter of fact, I'm using, Malt myself to find some expertise that we don't have internally. I did before, and I'm still doing it as we speak. So that's the first part about Malt. Now, obviously, the question was how I differentiate myself from Malt. Malt, as you know, is a mainstream platform. When I mean mainstream, it means that You can find an IT developer, you can find a marketing consultant, you can find an assistant as well. So you have 270,000 or 300,000 freelancer plus, I think, in Malta right now, in the different countries where they are. And obviously, this is not just specific to one type of job. The way we differentiate ourselves is that we are coming from the administrative support world. This is where we have our expertise. We know what the customer demands, and we know what the profile expects as well, and what's their task. And I think that's where we differentiate ourselves. When we talk to the clients, when we talk to the companies, all the freelancer, we understand their language. We know what they're expecting. And I think both the companies and the freelancer like that very much. They appreciate to be able to talk to experts in both ways. So basically, yes, we are an intermediation platform, absolutely, and this is our business model. But we aim to be more than that and to bring additional value to both the companies and the freelancer. We will soon provide some specific training for the freelancers that you obviously cannot do when you're a mainstream platform. Some collaboration tools in between the freelancer as well, and some automated tools that we're using ourselves and that we have developed for our service providing business, and that we will eventually bring to the pool of freelance as well. So this is basically how we differentiate ourselves, because we know the market, we need the offer, the demand, and we bring additional service.
Okay, so you basically have this one focus, and you have the possibility to get really good and knowledgeable in this area, and thereby serve the clients better, right?
Yeah, we basically, what we want is to become the leader when it comes to, whenever a company in the future will look for an admin, freelancer, our aim is that they think about Tima as, the expert, basically, not only because we have most profile in France, we will soon get there, as a matter of fact, but also because we take good care of our freelancer, we train them, and we bring them and give them some tools to do their job better, to be more productive, and for the freelancer to feel more comfortable as well, being able to share this problem, the best practice with the rest of the freelancer, and gain competence throughout the training.
Yeah, I think it makes total sense, of course, since at Uplink we're basically doing something very similar, where we try to not just be a platform to find a developer, but we also try to, or we do give the clients as well as the freelancers the service of curating the jobs, curating the freelancers, offering them a lot of stuff in terms of education and in terms of connecting them to other people in the community. I would think, what would you say? What could Malt, for example? Because if you're really focused on one area, like you are with the admin freelancers, or we are with the developers, you have the possibility to go really deep and to really understand your clients, and you're always talking about the same topics, so you become very knowledgeable. And as you say, Malt is, or Upwork or any other big platform is more like a general platform. What could they do differently to make it harder for smaller platforms like ours? Like if you run Malt, what would you do differently, for example, to attack, in quotes, Tima, or to
I will try to buy Uplink, I guess.
Okay, that's a good answer.
No, well, actually, it's. I
mean, is it an unsolvable problem? It's not so much
a joke. I think it's different. I think it's two different jobs. It's a two different approach, not job, two different approach, basically. You cannot be a specialist and mainstream at the same time. So you either mainstream and you provide your main asset is to be so big that you can find just everything on that platform, like Amazon. Basically, you go to Amazon and you'll find pretty much everything. Now, if you want deep knowledge and you want expertise for each job you're looking for, then obviously you'll be better off with a specific platform. And I think it will remain. And I think it's healthy that both type of platform exist. As long as the cake is big enough, and it is big enough, and it's growing still, I think there's room for everyone. Uplink, Tima, and Mold to thrive. Actually, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. There's just so much demand, and in the area that we work in, there's just so much development, and so many more people are becoming freelancers every year. So as you say, the cake is big enough.
Also, the last thing is, like, there'll be always another platform to come. And because we like any industry, now we're talking, this is very digital, but any industry, you've got, the industry is on the rise. Then you have the mainstream platform. Then it becomes so big that you can actually have specific platform to certain jobs, and eventually we will all reach a top, Once we reach the top, then the pressure is on pricing. Usually it's always the same thing, so especially commission will go down, the fees, and from 10% it'll go to 7%, and so on and so on. And then what makes you stand apart is not so much if you just fight on the fees. It's a lost battle, everyone will lose it at the end of the day. If you have already provided those additional services to your freelancer and to your company, I think it's, in the long run, from my perspective, it's a healthier business to work with.
So do you think the freelancer that are using Tima, they are loyal to you, let's say? Like, if they would see at some point they get more jobs via Mold or any other platform, what would make them stick to Tima?
I think let's face it, the first reason why a freelancer is going on a platform is to get a job. Let's face it, if you have plenty of jobs, no one goes on the platform. So obviously, if you hear about a platform that provides you many more missions every month, you'll go to the platform. That's for sure. The good thing about being specific is that we will soon become, as I said earlier on, the largest platform in terms of number of profile within that specific industry. Meaning, like, obviously when you're looking for a profile, then you've got a better chance to find someone if you come on our platform than another one. That's the first aspect. And the second one is by bringing additional services, always coming back to the same thing. I think loyalty comes through business, bringing business, of course, but it comes as well with all the interaction and the additional service you will provide for the freelancer. If tomorrow we are not just intermediation platform, but we help them to get more competence, have the right training, have the right tools that they wouldn't get otherwise, specific tools to their needs, then there is no reason to go elsewhere, especially if, as a matter of fact, we are already the largest platform in this industry. So I really do believe that it's not just about intermediation and connecting employees and freelance. Is to support those freelance on their basically daily business, and not just bringing some customers, basically. And that's how you gain loyalty, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's what I think as well, that it's a combination of a constant deal flow and the community aspect, that the freelancers really see that you're not just talking to them one-on-one and they don't know who else is in the community, but you really make an effort to connect them online and offline as well, so they can just learn from each other. And I think it's also important that the people in your community see that you're not just trying to make money, but that you do a lot of stuff without making money, so they see that you really care about this topic and about the community, and it's not all about making a dime.
And I think it feels when it's sincere or not. It's like in a personal relationship, you give because it makes you happy and makes the other one happy as well. And if it's sincere, I think the community feels it as well. That is not just oriented to make more money, but it's just we need each other. And I think that's what I always tell to the whether freelance I'm talking to, is like, you need us to bring you some turnover, and we need you as well. And I think in that sense, we need to make sure that the platform answer meet your needs, and meet our need as a company as well to make money. But it's important that we build this platform together with the freelancer. That's the community is central, I think, within a platform. And this sense of community, from my perspective, you can only get it if those freelancers share the same problems, they share the same aim. It's very difficult to bring a sense of community when you have an IT developer, UX designer, marketing consultant, and assistant. They just don't have the same life. They don't share the same values sometimes, the same, very different. And we all want to belong to something, basically. That's human nature.
Yeah, I think that's a trick, to make the community so small or so focused that the people in the community have a lot in common, but to make it big enough that it's not just, 10 people, but it's a sizable amount that the people feel, okay, it's developing, it's growing. But like you said, it's not people who don't have a lot in common and who don't have the same questions and the same challenges and so forth. And it's funny with community, because I think it became such a buzzword in the last 10 years or something.
Yeah. But if you notice, I didn't use the word community, the very beginning, because I have trouble with that word, that everyone use this community word.
It's so overused. And if you go to the mall, like every shop will tell you, join our community by, I don't know, downloading the app or getting our points card or whatever. And for me, it's always the yardstick is, do you really encourage the people in the community to talk to each other? If it's only one-on-one communication between whoever is running the community and the people in the community, it's not a community. If I'm in a community, what it's maybe somebody calls a community, and I don't know who else is in it, and I have no way of, contacting them, I'm just part of like a group of I'm just a customer or a client or whatever. Yeah? So at Uplink, we always try to connect the people together as much as possible, so they know, hey, these other people are in the community as well, and they feel like, okay, this is somebody who is similar to me. I belong here. Yeah. Otherwise, after a while, you think, okay, it's growing and growing, and I don't know the other people. I'm just a little cog in a machine, and they don't have.
I think this sense of community develop as well when you feel that you have a word, to say, and you can be heard, and you can actually make things change, improve. Again, as you said, if the community just communicate your internal information, this is not a community. Community somehow has to be able to have a certain power within that platform as well, I would say, to say when it's going in the right direction, when it's not going in the right direction. Basically, sometime even, requesting some additional features, being able to complain as well when it doesn't work. So I think if you want to create this sense of community, you have to empower them. I think that's the most important aspect. It's not just about drinking beer, in a nice, although it's part of it. It's a big part of it, I know. But if they don't feel empowered, and if they don't feel they can have any impact on what's going on, you lose eventually the sense of community.
Yeah. I think that's a key, especially with online communities, right? Because online you can join 10 communities per day, and you can chat with other people, but the bigger it is, and often you don't have the feeling that you can change anything there. And like you say, if you really feel that the people running the community try to get your input and try to ask questions and really take your answer seriously, I think that's really the deciding factor. When people get asked, they think about what it means, right? I mean,
absolutely.
When we asked our members, hey, we want to have this new feature, or what do you think? We do a meetup in this city or whatever. They actually think about, okay, would that make sense, and would I like to do that? How do you do that at Tima? How do you communicate with the people, with the freelancers?
Well, that's something we will definitely launch in a more intensive way in 2023. That's something we've announced to all the freelancers, and that's our aim. That's on the agenda. But as you know, when you launch a platform, there are millions of things to do. And we were mainly focusing at first to make sure that the platform is running well, to have the right feature, because one of the main challenge when you come on the market, on an existing market, is that although you're a newcomer, you're expected to come with as many features as the existing platform. You're actually expected to bring more. Because you're a newcomer. If you don't bring anything additional on the plate, what's your true value? So it means that basically there is a certain barrier nowadays when you start a platform, because you need to come with all those servicing, payment services, and the chat within the platform, and so on, which are obviously I'm talking to someone who is developing on a daily basis. This is not my case. It's heavy. So we were basically focusing on making sure we have a well-functioning platform with the right feature that meets at least the market standard, if not better. And the first 5 months, the idea was to acquire enough freelance to be able to actually go to the companies as well. So we had those main focus was on getting things right, acquire a large enough freelancer base to be able to go to the companies, and that was basically pretty much this year objective. And we're very happy with the results so far, because we are close to 500 freelancer on the platform, which makes it already one of the largest platform in France for this specific admin support. And we have good success with the companies as well, starting to outsource and use our freelancer on the platform since now October. So that was our main focus. So the community as such is really coming. That's our main focus for 2023. So, but we had some webinars, of course, in the meantime, just, newsletter, and webinars just to let them know what was going on. But we will really start to involve them in the decision process in 2023.
Yeah, like you said, there's a million things to do, and as we listed, it's about the jobs, it's about the communication with the community, it's about the education with resources like webinars and all that stuff. So you can't, as a small team, work in all areas at the same time. You always have to focus on one thing and then focus on the next thing. Also, I'm really...
And let's face it, if you want to engage the people, it's much easier to engage a freelancer that's already had a mission or two with your platform than when you just...
Absolutely.
You haven't received any, you didn't get any turnover from that platform. Now that we start to get those mission running, we obviously it's much easier to talk to those freelancers, because they start to see the value of our platform, and then of course they want more. Okay, this platform can bring us turnover. What else can they bring compared to the other platform? Then it's much easier to address this topic as well with those freelancers.
Yeah, I think so too. That it's really the key that you always focus on the jobs, but don't make it like the whole business. There are some platforms which focus on everything else apart from the jobs. They really say, okay, for us it's about the freelancer education and getting them together to learn from each other and so forth. But as soon as they have the part of, okay, we also post jobs from external companies and from our clients. That's what they are measured by, right? If they then have a very low deal flow and only very few jobs, it doesn't make it as interesting as if you really have a constant flow of new deals. What I wanted to mention is that I find it fascinating how many services there are for people like us who are trying to build a community. There's so many. I find something new like every week. I'm going to put some in the show notes of new ways to get the community together, to build communication tools, to build like voting tools and stuff like that. I think even that, it's like one level apart from us. It's really developing very quickly. because so many online services really are trying to build an active community and get them engaged. I think that's really cool that you can see that it's really the focus, not just for the platforms, but also for people building for the platforms. Were there any counterintuitive things that you learned where you would say you expected it to work completely differently than how it worked in reality?
Or you mean as being an entrepreneur, or for the platform itself, or
both? Yeah.
As an entrepreneur, I would say no, not really. I think I'm not that young anymore, Manuel. I'm close to my 40, and as a matter of fact, I learned to trust more and more my intuition. And if I look back, any decision that I took those past 10 years, whether it was private decision or work-related decision, the best one were always the one where I trusted my intuition. Mm-hmm. Again, intuition is not just something you're born with. You build it with experience as well. So it makes sense that when you get a bit older, some gray hair, like we start to have a manual, again, so your intuition maybe is better than when you were in your early 20s, Mm-hmm. And I just, although I'm very rational and I always base my decision on fact, I would always favor the intuition if I have to make a decision. And so therefore I can't really say that something was counterintuitive. No, I just trusted my intuition, and I'm not saying that I'm right, but it's right for myself at least.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool. So I think we could go on talking about this topic for another 4 to 5 hours. But we have to come to an end, unfortunately. I have 2 more questions for you. Is there any tool or service that you use that you can recommend that not many people know already, that's kind of flying under the radar?
I wish I could say yes, but to be totally fair, we have a good insight in with the tools that are being used right now, because with our executive assistant service, we basically work with the tools of our own customers, and our customers mm-hmm. work in different industries, and they have specific softwares. They have software specific to some jobs, to industries. So I think we are exposed to many different tools, and I would say they vary. Some of them are just obviously, but you see them all the time on the internet. I don't think it makes much sense that I just name it. But what I do see actually, and maybe I'm going to change your question actually, is like sometimes I feel like we're using too many tools. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's not where you wanted to go, but
no, please. Are there any tools that you don't want to use anymore? That's maybe a better question.
Okay. No, the question, I think, after a couple of months when we work with our customers, quite often we look at the processes, the way they work, and quite often we come to the conclusion that they have too many tools, actually. Mm-hmm. We are very good in this society, and generally speaking, to create needs and to have one tool, one SaaS software for mm-hmm. each little problem, mm-hmm. and you end up having companies, especially actually small-sized company and medium-sized company, accumulating lots of different tools for very specific needs. And if you actually go down really deeply into how much they use it, and how much it costs, because eventually, although it costs sometimes just 10, 20 euro per user per month, mm-hmm. when you add all the SaaS, software, it becomes quite actually expensive. So yes, there are some great tools, but if I had to make a recommendation, it would be actually just use the one that you really need for your business, that really make a big difference, because the rest just distract the employees and sometimes make the whole process much more complex. So maybe that's not the answer you were expecting.
No, I agree. I mean, I always like to discover new tools, and I think sometimes these new tools, like Tima is very, very focused on one problem and Mold on the big problem. Sometimes the more specific tools solve this problem so well that you're happy to pay 10, 20 euros per month. But I absolutely feel you when you say that we're accumulating more tools, and it kind of shows at the end of the month when all the bills are rolling in, that there's just too many.
It's funny.
Of them.
You just maybe we can take the example of collaboration tools. There's so many of them, and you just end up. Sometimes I see in companies they're using 4, 5, 6 of them for the same purpose. And once they don't get an answer on one of them, they just use the second one, and then the third one, and then eventually they call. And basically, just think about that. And it's meant to basically bring a better communication internally. Basically, any company's purpose is to have to increase productivity. Let's put it that way. And all those tools. For most of them, the idea is to be most productive, and I'm not sure that at the end of the day, the result is always quite there, especially for those kind of tools. Now, I do differentiate tools from services. Tools, from my perspective, are software, SaaS software. Services are like Uplink, Tima, Molt, basically. And I do believe that, especially for small size company, but not only small size company, if you don't have the expertise internally, it's always better to get it from an external source. Sometimes it's even better to wait a little bit to get the cash flow and get the right expertise than do it internally, unless you're very, very talented and can become an expert in every single domain, which is not my case. I tend always to use someone that has the expertise, and I think even for larger company, this economy is going so fast that even when you bring an expert on board, it doesn't remain an expert very long, because then eventually you just melt into the company culture and you don't have this disruptive approach. So service, from my perspective, are very different from tools. And obviously, services like Uplink and Tima are absolute, things that you need to
must have. I think we don't have to discuss like the advantages of freelancers or of experts in a certain field. I think we both agree on that. And another question I always ask our guests is there any book or podcast or blog post, anything that you recently discovered that you really like and that you want to recommend?
Well, again, this is very personal. I know it's very good to say that I'm trendy to say that I'm listening to this business podcast and it changed my life. And
there are also too many podcasts in case you want to mention that.
As a matter of fact, I'm quite boring. I still read books. I do listen to podcasts, but books tend to be actually. I tend to read books because I want to learn something, whether it's something very personal or whether it's business oriented. Last book, that I read was Sapiens. I don't know if you read this one.
What is it about?
It's basically one of the bestseller, in the US, and it's a writer called Harari, I think from Israel, and it gives you broad perspective of the evolution of humankind. So this is a great book. I really recommend it. It's really easy to read, and that's personal reading. And then on a more business side, I have on my desk right now, Rethink lead generation. There you are, and that's something that I just need to learn from, because obviously I do have experts within my company, but if you want to manage this expert, you need yourself to be up to date. So I'm reading that basic. So nothing, breathtaking, but something that's very personal. And as a podcast, actually, still for me is something that I listen to on my private time. So I usually, up to now anyway, I don't listen to business-oriented podcasts. So I'm more into things that I actually like: sport, nutrition, surfing, stuff like that. Which unfortunately, doesn't really, again, bring anything to your question, I'm afraid.
No, it does. It does. I think it's really important to keep a certain area of your life as like your personal life, right? As an entrepreneur, I think many people just switch over and only listen to business podcasts and only read business books and only read online if it has something to do with your business. And then you're like just thinking about it 24/7. And I think it's really important. I mean, some do it naturally, maybe like you, that they say, okay, I don't really read any business books, or I don't really listen to any business podcasts. But I think a lot of people need to actively try to carve out a part of their life that stays private and that stays within their hobbies. And
maybe
not,
it comes also again with the age, where you've got a family and you need to find that right balance in between work and and your family time and taking care of yourself as well. And when I work, I focus 100% on work, but when I'm off, I tend to be off as well and have my own time. So and leave those business discussion and books and podcast away.
That's great. We should do another episode in 10 years when you're approaching 50 and I just turned 50, and we'll talk about age and priorities again.
Absolutely.
Laurent, thanks so much for talking to me, for being a guest. I found it really interesting, your views on this whole topic of, building a platform, building a community, and obviously you're in a completely different market than us in Germany, but I think it's similar enough that we can learn a lot from each other. So
absolutely.
Thank
again
you
for having me. It was a pleasure.
And we'll talk again soon.
In 10 years.
Yeah, the latest. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Manya. Bye-bye.